He took the forbidden path. While traveling, what happened will leave you speechless. The sun was a molten orb hanging low in the sky, casting long shadows over the vast savanna. Baako was a 22-year-old man known in his village for his bold spirit and insatiable curiosity. His friends often teased him, calling him the Pathfinder, for there was no trail too treacherous, no terrain too daunting for Baako. Yet, even he had his limits, shaped by the stern warnings of his elders. In the heart of the West African plains, there was an ancient road shrouded in mystery, the Forbidden Path. It was said to wind through the cursed land of Nyoka, a place of malevolent spirits, and its very name was enough to send shivers down the spine of anyone who heard it. The elders spoke of the path in hushed tones, their faces etched with fear. Travelers who dared to tread it either never returned or came back changed, their eyes haunted by unspeakable horrors. Baako had always dismissed these tales as mere superstition. To him, they were relics of an older, fearful age, unfit for a world where courage and resilience paved the way for progress. But his skepticism would soon be tested in ways he could never have imagined. One fateful morning, Baako went on a journey to visit his uncle, who lived in a neighboring village 3 days away. His path was clear and well-trodden, but a fierce storm erupted by midday, darkening the sky and flooding the plains. Forced to seek shelter under a baobab tree, Baako waited for the tempest to subside. As the rain ceased and the sun re-emerged, he realized that the storm had obscured the main road. The landscape looked unfamiliar. The landmarks he relied upon washed away. Then, he noticed the entrance to a narrow trail, overgrown with vines and barely discernible among the foliage. Baako hesitated. The air around the trail seemed different, heavier, as if charged with an unseen force. The realization struck him like a bolt. This was the forbidden path. For a moment, the elders' warnings echoed in his mind. But Baako's pride was a stronger voice, drowning out the whispers of caution. "A path is a path," he muttered to himself. "Superstition cannot harm me." He stepped onto the trail. The forest canopy grew denser with every step, blotting out the sunlight and plunging the path into an eerie twilight. Strange noises filled the air, rustling leaves, the distant call of animals, and an occasional whisper that seemed too human to be the wind. Baako's heart began to pound, but he pressed on, convincing himself that his imagination was playing tricks. Hours passed, and the trail seemed unending, winding deeper into the forest. The atmosphere grew oppressive, and an unsettling feeling crept over Baako. The trees appeared to move when he wasn't looking, their gnarled branches twisting into grotesque shapes. The ground beneath his feet felt alive, as though it pulsed with an unnatural rhythm. Suddenly, he heard a sound that froze him in his tracks, a low, guttural growl. He turned to see a pair of glowing eyes staring at him from the shadows. A massive black hyena emerged, its fur bristling and teeth bared in a snarl. Baako reached for his knife, but the creature made no move to attack. Instead, it began to circle him, its movements deliberate and unnervingly intelligent. "Why have you come here, traveler?" a deep voice rumbled. Baako spun around, his eyes wide with disbelief. The voice hadn't come from a person, but from the hyena itself. Its lips had barely moved, yet the words were clear and resonant. Panic surged through Baako, but he forced himself to stand his ground. I lost my way," he stammered. "I mean, no harm." The hyena's eyes narrowed. "This is no place for the living. Turn back, if you value your soul." "I cannot turn back," Baako replied, summoning his courage. "I must reach my destination." The hyena let out a chilling laugh, a sound that sent shivers down Baako's spine. "Very well, brave one. But know this, every step you take will bring you closer to the truth you seek, and farther from the life you know." With that, the hyena vanished into the shadows, leaving Bayako alone once more. The encounter left him shaken, but his resolve hardened. He continued along the path, each step heavier than the last. As night fell, the forest came alive with strange lights and sounds. Bayako saw figures flitting between the trees, men and women dressed in flowing garments, their faces obscured. They seemed to be dancing, but their movements were erratic, as if controlled by unseen strings. When he tried to approach, they dissolved into mist, leaving behind only the faint scent of incense. The deeper he ventured, the more his thoughts began to drift. Memories of his childhood, long buried under the weight of time, bubbled to the surface. He recalled sitting by the fire as his grandmother told tales of the spirit world, her voice filled with reverence and caution. "Every path has its guardian," she had said, "and every traveler must answer to them." At the time, he had thought little of her words, but now they resonated with an urgency he couldn't ignore. The path eventually led to a clearing where an enormous tree stood, its roots sprawling like the tentacles of a great beast. At the base of the tree was a stone altar, covered in intricate carvings that seemed to writhe and shift when looked at directly. Bayako felt an overwhelming urge to touch the altar, as though it was calling to him. Against his better judgment, he placed his hand on the cold stone. A blinding light erupted from the altar, and Bayako was engulfed in a whirlwind of sensations. He saw visions of his ancestors, their faces both familiar and alien. He heard their voices, a cacophony of warnings and encouragement. And then, he was shown the truth of the forbidden path. The path was a bridge between worlds, a conduit for spirits, both benevolent and malevolent. Those who ventured onto it without understanding its nature risked being trapped forever, their souls consumed by the entities that dwelled within. Bayako realized that his journey was not an accident, but a test, a trial to prove his worthiness to wield the knowledge and power of his lineage. When the vision ended, Bayako found himself back on the trail, the altar and the clearing nowhere in sight. The forest seemed less menacing now, as though it had accepted him. Guided by an unseen force, he made his way out of the woods and back to familiar ground. The journey back to the village was uneventful, but Bayako felt as though he carried the weight of 1,000 lifetimes. The villagers greeted him with astonishment, for he had been gone longer than expected, and his appearance had changed. His once youthful face now bore the marks of someone who had seen beyond the veil of the ordinary. When Bayako returned to his village, he was no longer the same. The elders saw it in his eyes, a depth and wisdom that had not been there before. He shared his story, not to boast, but to teach, warning others of the path's dangers while honoring its purpose. In the weeks that followed, Bayako began to notice subtle changes in his daily life. Animals seemed drawn to him, often staring at him with a knowing look. The villagers began seeking his counsel, believing that his journey had given him access to knowledge beyond the mortal realm. Bayako, though humbled by their trust, remained cautious. He understood that the power he had glimpsed was not his to wield carelessly. One day, as he sat beneath a baobab tree, a young boy approached him. The boy, barely 10 years old, had heard whispers of Bayako's journey and begged to know more. Bayako hesitated, aware of the danger that curiosity could bring, but he saw himself in the boy's eager eyes. He decided to share a part of his story, carefully omitting the darker truths. "The path taught me," Bayako said, "that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it. But remember, not all paths are meant to be walked. Some are there to remind us of the mysteries that lie beyond our understanding." As Bayako settled into his role as the village's unofficial seer and guide, he began documenting the symbols and lessons from his journey. His writings were filled with sketches of the altar's carvings and the shadowy figures he encountered, alongside reflections on their meaning. The elders took great interest in his work, and soon a small council was formed to preserve and interpret the knowledge Baako had brought back. Despite his newfound responsibilities, Baako often found himself drawn to the edge of the forest, gazing at the hidden entrance to the forbidden path. Though he never entered again, he couldn't shake the feeling that his journey was unfinished. There were questions that lingered in his mind. Why had he been chosen? What lay at the heart of Nyoka's curse? Years passed, and Baako's legend grew. Travelers from distant villages came seeking his wisdom, and stories of his bravery were told around campfires far and wide. Yet Baako remained humble, always reminding others that he was merely a servant of the unseen forces that governed the world. One evening, as Baako meditated beneath the baobab tree, an elderly woman approached him. Her face was lined with age, but her eyes sparkled with a vitality that belied her years. She introduced herself as Nana Efua, a wandering healer and storyteller. She had heard of Baako's journey and wished to hear his tale firsthand. As Baako recounted his story, Nana Efua listened intently, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she nodded thoughtfully. "You have seen much, young one," she said. "But the path you walked is not merely a test. It is a gateway. And every gateway has two sides." Baako's curiosity was piqued. "What do you mean, Nana?" he asked. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The spirits you encountered, the visions you saw, they are but fragments of a larger truth. To truly understand, you must seek the other side of the gateway. But beware, the journey will demand more than courage. It will demand sacrifice." Before Baako could ask more, Nana Efua rose and disappeared into the night, leaving him with more questions than answers. In the days that followed, Baako found himself consumed by thoughts of the other side. He knew that returning to the forbidden path would be perilous, but he also felt a deep calling, as though his destiny lay beyond the veil. After much contemplation, he decided to prepare for a second journey, one that would take him deeper into the mysteries of Nyoka. Equipped with offerings for the spirits and guided by the wisdom of the elders, Baako set out once more. The villagers watched with a mixture of awe and trepidation, their prayers following him into the forest. This time, the path welcomed him with an eerie familiarity. The whispers were louder, the shadows more distinct. As he approached the clearing where the great tree had once stood, he found himself face to face with the black hyena. Its eyes gleamed with recognition. "You have returned," the hyena said. "But the path you seek is not the one you left. Are you prepared to face the truth?" Baako nodded, his resolve unwavering. "I am ready." The hyena stepped aside, and the forest parted to reveal a new trail, darker and narrower than before. As Baako stepped onto it, he felt a profound shift in the air, as though he had crossed into another realm entirely. The journey that lay ahead would test him in ways he could never have imagined, but he walked forward with the knowledge that he was not alone. And so, Baako's legend continued to unfold, a story of courage, sacrifice, and the unyielding quest for truth. The forbidden path had claimed many lives, but it had also given rise to a guardian whose spirit burned brighter than the darkest night. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the unknown. If you enjoyed this tale, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest videos. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.